an interview on Thursday with ABC's Good Morning America, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz backpedaled on his statement to eliminate the Electoral College. He aligned himself instead with the position of the Harris-Walz campaign and said, quote, "My position is the campaign's position." Let's watch.
Well, it's not the campaign's position. And the point I'm trying to make is that there's folks that feel every vote must count in every state. And I think some of folks feel that's not the case. Our campaign does that. And the point I'm saying is I'm in 5 states in 2 days. We're out there making the case that the campaign's position is clear, that that's not their position. Their position and my position is to make sure that everybody understands their vote, no matter what state they're in, matters.
Despite the campaign's current position, in a 2019 interview on Jimmy Kimmel Live, Vice President Kamala Harris toyed with the idea of abolishing the Electoral College. Let's watch.
Senator Warren, Elizabeth Warren, had a town hall last night, and she said that she thinks we should do away with the Electoral College. Do you agree with that?
I think that I'm open to the discussion. I mean, there's no question that the popular vote has been diminished in terms of making the final decision about who's the president of the United States, and we need to deal with that. So I'm open to the discussion.
Okay, so another little campaign blunder, unfortunately this time from Tim Walz.
Not people on the same page, certainly.
Clearly not. I mean, this was apparently during a fundraiser, I believe, with donors, where he was recorded saying that he would support eliminating the Electoral College. Not a great look as the campaign is trying to win over rural voters, surely.
Yeah, I mean, again, and he had to backpedal on that. I think the remarks were made actually at Gavin Newsom's residence in Sacramento for donors. And I think it's in the context of it, from what I read from Governor Walz, is the frustration that, since he's joined the ticket, he's really only traveled to 7 states. And I think that's actually, a disadvantage for someone coming in. Obviously, he's been on the political scene, was in Congress, got 2-term governor of Minnesota. But the fact that they're spending all of their time in these key states and not obviously seeing the rest of the country may be an argument to open the conversation, as Kamala Harris suggested, which is the perfect answer for that. Just like packing the Supreme Court, we'll open the conversation or study it.
Open the conversation about abolishing ICE.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we will.
She loves to have conversations.
Start that conversation because there is this fear that with population changing and folks moving to inner cities and other states, that you're going to be so far out of the public will that what was it, 40,000 votes this last go round between Biden and Trump could have flipped the Electoral College, even though President Biden won the popular vote by 7.5 million votes.
Yeah, I mean, I've obviously our country was designed that way, and I think it's fair to point out that the swing states have not always been the same, right?
That's true.
They change pretty frequently, even within a decade or so, because of the population movement, because of even the movement of people's political ideals. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that the Midwest was a blue wall. Trump broke the blue wall in 2016. Biden won some of it back in 2020. So none of this is really fixed or set in stone, and is really, I think, vital to making sure that people who are in what many call flyover country do have a stake in what happens in the national presidential election. Our founders wanted our country to have representation that way. And so I don't care for the idea of floating getting rid of the Electoral College at all. I mean, because then you have what is the election being decided by California and New York any better than the election being decided by 7
Sign me up for that.
I'm sure you would be. I'm sure you would be.
I mean, the interesting thing, I was watching a documentary not too long ago about the Ford-Carter election in '76, and the fact, to your point, Amber, that at that time there were like 25 states that were kind of within the margin, where they had to really spend time on the ground in each of those states. And we've seen over time that number kind of dwindle. It's varied a little bit between 5 and 10, but that's certainly been the case over the last couple of cycles, that it really is these key deciding states. Now we'll see, our conversation earlier about Texas. That's been the white whale for Democrats for the longest time, with changing demographics there. That margin was a lot closer for Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, and Joe Biden and Donald Trump, than places like Ohio and Iowa that were at one point bellwether states that went back and forth. But it is interesting to kind of see the changing demographics on the ground.
There are also different political strategies into winning a popular vote versus an electoral
It's a very
vote
good point. Yep.
election, right? We don't actually know that California is as blue as people say because a lot of Republicans don't vote because they feel like their vote doesn't matter. It's possible that in a popular vote election that Republicans could run up the score in places like Texas and Florida and maybe get some of those disaffected voters in places like New York and California.
Sounds like you might be open to the conversation if it motivates blue state Republicans to turn out.
I'm not opening any conversation. I'm just playing devil's advocate that obviously the strategy is different for these two systems. So we don't even really know what would happen in a popular vote system because the campaigns would be doing entirely different things than they're doing right now. So Tim Walz could complain about having to visit 7 states, but if it were a popular vote, maybe he'd spend all of his time in California. I mean,
or in population centers.
Yeah,
certainly.
exactly. So we don't know that. I mean, to me, this is just part of a larger trend of the Kamala campaign having a difficult time divorcing itself from where she was in 2019. And I think one of the big sticking points for a lot of voters, when they say they don't know a lot about who Kamala Harris is, it's because she has never really provided a cogent, clear explanation of why she has shifted so dramatically. She said that she has, that her values haven't changed, that she's had conversations with people, but I think people want to hear her say, like, on immigration, how exactly did you come to the conclusion that you no longer want to decriminalize illegal immigration, you no longer want to give illegal immigrants free sex changes and driver's licenses, you don't want to abolish ICE, all of those positions are gone, and your answer to that is, well, I prosecuted transnational gangs when I was AG. Like, that's just not good enough.
Well, in the vice president's defense, I think she has been very forward in saying, listen, when I'm a senator of California and advocating for what the vast majority of Californians want, which is likely on the more liberal side of the spectrum when it comes to issues, that's my role in Washington, is to be an advocate for that state. And then you see that all the time with candidates then pivoting to a national campaign.
The problem with that, Kevin, is that she was running for president when she took a lot of these positions, right?
Well, and again, the Democratic Party, just those last couple of cycles, with the rise of and the energy behind Bernie Sanders, those were the animating elements of my party. Now, I'm a Joe Biden guy, right? So, I was a surrogate for the president, and that's my politics. But again, I think it was a calculation of seeing where the Democratic Party was at and the energy of the Democratic Party and playing into that more than necessarily, where her positions are now.
Yeah, so Bernie was probably right when he said that she was doing it because of...
It was a very honest moment from the Vermont
It was,
senator.
yeah. And see, I think voters want to know, is it a political calculation or have you had a real transformation in your ideology? And I think she's been kind of like trying to tiptoe that line, and that's what comes across as very inauthentic. Maybe if she just admitted, like, hey guys, I'm a populist, I'll take whatever position the majority of my voters want. I don't know, maybe that gets her more respect than...
and we'll see if voters really discredit her on that element. I think hopefully, more voters out there are saying, I want, not a rigid elected official. Donald Trump has had maybe 18 different opinions over the course of 40 years on the question of abortion and things like that, and not the rigid framework that so many people, the attacks on John Kerry for flip-flopping and things like that, that were so effective in 2004. We'll see if the American voter wants a more pragmatic person to be that commander-in-chief.
Yeah, and I will say a more effective political argument from the Trump campaign in terms of her flip-flopping would be she's really the 2019 Kamala, and she's just saying this to get elected, and then she's going to do all the radical stuff that
and they tried that with, Comrade Kamala and things like that, trying to tie her and Tim Walz to some of the more liberal policies. I don't think that actually has really changed the dynamics so much. And the fact that, the New York Times Siena poll says that now by a small number, but a number nonetheless, that Kamala Harris represents the candidate of change over Donald Trump. It's just 2 points, but that she's been able to take that mantle as the incumbent vice president is also pretty interesting too.
That is fascinating. All right, unfortunately, that's it for us. That's all the time we have. It's going to do it for us this week on Rising. But as always, be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we are now available anywhere you listen to podcasts. Bye. See you next week.